Start. Yeah, okay. I think we should, yeah, okay. So you can do that up there? Oh.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon and welcome to this final plenary. And I hope that this plenary will begin to tie things together for you. A little bit about myself and then my co-facilitator, moderator for this plenary. But my name is Christine Young and I'm the chairperson of a local government network on age-friendly communities in Western Australia. Western Australia as a state in Australia is an affiliate member of the global network and has several communities that are members of the global network, as well as many other local governments that use bits and pieces of this framework and understand how it works. I've been involved in this journey for some time. When I started, the municipality I worked for many years was one of two Australian cities who were part of the WHO Age-Friendly Community or Cities pilot project back in 2006 and 2007. It's so heartening that there's several of us here today that date from that time when our communities were part of that initial project that really highlighted to us the value and the impact of the work that was happening. At that time too, I was in my late 40s. 20 years later, I'm an older person. So it's interesting to be at a congress where we are talking about my people. That's a different experience. And it's also pretty cool that as I age, this work continues to welcome me, which is good in the world because often that's not the case because of ageism. Western Australia has a lot of similarities in the work that I've heard throughout this Congress. Lots of similarities, particularly around some of the challenges, but we also have a geographical challenge. If we were a country, we'd be the 10th largest in the world. We have a population of only 3 million. So we're very sparsely populated over, I think, 2.5 million square kilometres. Most of us live in the capital city, Perth, and then we have many small rural and remote and Indigenous remote communities. So I was so inspired this morning listening to the gentleman from rural Spain because a lot of the elements that he spoke of I could identify with, particularly the low population numbers. And it's inspiring to see that this framework continues to work in small rural communities, in remote communities, as well as in mega cities around the world. At the beginning of this Congress, Anne Barrett said in her welcome that ageing is an opportunity for transformation. It's not a problem to be managed. And I think all of us here recognise the truth of that statement. This work to me is really about connection, and the global network connects us as well as the way that we connect with our own communities when we do this work. I think this is special work because at the moment in our world, often there's things that are dividing us as peoples, but using this framework really demonstrates that we can come together and share the same values, share the same goal. And even though we speak many different languages, we speak the same language around age-friendly communities, and it brings us together. That's such a good thing in a world where there's a lot of current division. and I think it serves as a model going forward. I've also reflected on the last 20 years of my involvement with this work, and I'm excited about the future. If we've been able to build over 1,700 communities as part of the global network in that time, think what we can do in the next 10 years. And I think it will be a time of us also pursuing to ensure that people in low and middle income countries in the global south aren't left behind with this particular work. It's been enjoyable to me working with Paul McGarry, who I'm going to introduce to you now. We've only really met on Zoom until this conference, but it's been a delight sharing our thinking and thinking about this particular plenary. So I'd now like to welcome Paul.
Thanks, Christine. And when Christine and I were asked to lead this session, I think we were told we were top of the bill. Is that right? Because we were on the final session. And it felt like a little bit like two old-timers were being brought in to send us on our way at the end of 3 or 4 fantastic days. And we were asked to give some reflections on the whole, the 3 days and our highlights and so on. I just wanted to share a couple of things. Oh, I should say who I am first, shouldn't I? Yeah, I'm not up there. So I work in Greater Manchester, where I lead. I try to lead. Maybe is more accurate. A fantastic group of staff inside the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, which is regional government for close to 3 million people. We have a fantastic programme, an amazing ecosystem of, as you heard about earlier from my wonderful colleague Nicola, who sets out. So I won't repeat any of that. But I've been in this business. I started as a young man as well. I think I was maybe in my early 30s when I wrote my first action plan for Manchester City Council around older people. And you'll never guess what the themes were. They were housing and transport and ageism and why are politicians not great at this kind of thing. And 29 years later, as I say, the song remains the same, although as we will hear soon, the circumstances change around us always. So that's my first so I've been doing it a long time, and Manchester City Council was one of the first 12 members of the global network, and I've got to say I've kind of had the time of my life doing this work. It's been amazing because in some ways we're kind of making it up as we go along. We're developing our own programs, we're using our own brains, our own commitment, our own expertise to do all that. And somebody remarked to me, I think earlier in the week, it's a kind of, we're a movement where there aren't too many egos around as well. You know, that you can probably all think of being involved in organisations and agencies where there are some pretty intense egos that always have to be at the front of the queue and getting their voice heard. But I don't think this is one. And actually, I quite prefer being in the background and letting other colleagues do things. So let me just say a couple more things. So the first thing is what I've enjoyed greatly about being here all these days is seeing all the old comrades, I guess, who've been in this work for a long time, but meeting and speaking with and listening to some amazing young colleagues who are doing some fantastic work. And I feel confident that we will be passing the baton on to a more sophisticated group and smart group and passionate group of people over the next, I think, Christine, you mentioned over the next decade. I think that's right. So I'm hugely optimistic. There's a kind of another side to all doing this work, which I've experienced and you may do as well. And there's a kind of paradox, maybe, or irony about this, which is that our work can be quite lonely work, actually. And we can work in our municipality or our government office or wherever it is in our university. And quite often there's one or two of us, and maybe we're just doing this work half a day. And sometimes you can feel a little bit disconnected from other people, because generally speaking, our departments aren't large and well funded. And what is wonderful about events like this is you get to meet people who are doing the same thing. And it's almost, I describe it as being almost separated at birth. You meet people, yeah, I do that, yeah, I do that. Did you? Yeah. So I love that feeling and that experience about being part of the gang. I love that. I think as we look forward, there are some huge strategic challenges for us about how we think, about how we mobilise and position our work. And I think over the next year or two, in preparation for Singapore, some of these themes need to be really thought about. I think we're pretty good at knowing how to organise things, knowing how to engage our older adults, knowing how to change people's lives. I don't think we've quite got there yet on how we tell a story of our work in rooms of people that don't necessarily agree with us or don't see the importance of the work we do yet. And for me and for many others, that's a kind of everyday experience. And we have to think strategically about how we change that, how we position our work, how we build alliances. And at the core of all this, and I echo Christine's words and other people's words, how we ensure that our work is inclusive, equitable, and brings people together in difficult times. I just want to say one last thing, which is I was at the Dublin conference in 2000, I can't remember what year, was it 13 or 14? 11, okay. I was in, and I had a wonderful time. I saw some great presentations. I sat there and watched people do this amazing stuff, and I was just blown away, you know. And I had a great time with the Irish delegates as well, singing. It's a Freudian slip. Well, actually, the singing did come after the drinking. Rebel songs or something like that, I can't remember. And I mention this because when you come to conferences like this and events like this, you never forget them. And they're kind of embedded, aren't they, on us. And we will always remember something about these events. And one of, I guess, the regrets that I have over the last few years, that COVID kind of interrupted a lot of what we do. I mean, it was a horrific experience, wasn't it, for all of us? But it interrupted our work in many different ways. And it kind of fractured, I think. I mean, we met on Zoom, Christine, and you know, we've had a great time, but isn't it just great being in the same room as each other and just chewing the fat and having a glass of mineral water or whatever you fancy, and just really getting under the skin of things and exchanging business cards and sometimes telling told stories. Okay, so I miss all that, and I hope the work as we go forward is more about being in rooms together, more about the human and humanistic aspect of our work. There is one last thing I should say, and this is a bit of I think, a standing joke in the team that I have. Somebody suggested that I use certain jokes and parts of my speech on a routine basis, and that for them that this becomes a little bit boring. So bear with me. And some of you may have heard this early in the week. I don't know about you, I woke up this morning partly incredibly happy because England had won 4-2, and sorry to colleagues from Croatia and indeed probably any other football fans who are here. But I don't know about you, when you come to an audience like this, you're always slightly nervous, and I'm nervous. And I was talking to my wife last night, who's Irish and had no interest in England winning 4-2. She told me at great length. And, you know, I said, I'm a bit nervous about the morning. We've got all these arrangements to make, there's different languages in a place I've not spoken before. And she said, you know, Paul, you've been giving the same presentation for 20 years. You should be okay. So I hope I've been okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. So this plenary is really an opportunity for you to hear your thinking. So thank you this morning for all of you who worked so hard in those discussion groups. Thank you for your input and your thinking and your provocativeness, for challenging things. It's all been very useful. In the background, we've had an incredible group here of rapporteurs who were busily taking notes. They've worked through their lunchtime to bring together the culmination of that work that happened this morning. So we're going to work through each question rather than each group. So I'm firstly going to invite Ina Folecker to come and respond to the first question, which hopefully that works. Yes. What's worked well with the framework? And then we'll follow through with each of those questions. So what you'll hear is the culmination from those 7 different groups. And thank you again for all your efforts and input into thinking about this.
Thank you so much, Christine. I think I'll stay here if that's okay for everybody. It's a pleasure to present now some of the findings around the strength of the age-friendly cities and communities framework that have been identified in the group discussions, and I hope that even though it's a summary of all of the 7 groups, that still people find their own group in the summary that I provide. And I will focus first on kind of 4 major themes that emerged. So first, the flexible and yet structured approach with shared domains and the staged process allows municipalities worldwide to adapt to their unique contexts while maintaining also a common foundation. And that was really highlighted as a strength. That you can start where you are, build on what you have already done with a short-term and long-term target, and whatever your context. And this kind of balance between consistency and adaptability has been a major strength identified. However, also in relation to the domains, while it's been highlighted as a strength, it's also been raised in the challenges, of course, but my colleagues will speak to that. Then the second strength is the framework's holistic and cross-sectorial perspective that breaks down silos. So by framing a healthy aging as a multidimensional issue just beyond health, really, it fosters collaboration across sectors like urban planning, transportation, and social services, and many more. It, as people were saying, it helps to bring everybody around one table and create a joint vision. And it has also helped to gather broader support and align priorities. And what people in the group that I was taking notes of was also very much emphasizing is the enthusiasm and the passion that it creates at local level. And this is really a major driver of change, and people suggested also to build on this, as enthusiasm, as somebody in my group was saying, is contagious, and it will help to bring people on board that are not yet converted. And then the third strength mentioned is the participatory bottom-up design, which ensures that all the people are actively involved in shaping their communities, which helps to build trust and also creates ownership as people see their voices directly influencing change. And then finally, and I think this was also addressed both by you, Paul, and Christine, the framework also facilitates networking and exchange, and how rich this exchange is both at global, regional, national, and local level. And cities or municipalities, more generally speaking, using the same framework can help to really easily share best practices, learn from peers, and draw inspiration from examples all across the world. And many people highlighted how this Congress has been a major resource of inspiration, and also identified the global network as a powerful driver of innovation and progress. And then perhaps just another couple of brief points, additional strengths and takeaways from the different groups. One around visibility and advocacy. So the framework increases the visibility of all the populations on the public agenda, and it enables active participation, shifting aging from a sectorial issue into a broader societal priority. Then there was also a finding around strong political and management commitment, which comes from AFCC, as well as the support from networks, as I mentioned, either national, regional, or even the global network, which helps to drive progress and align resources as well. And then another strength mentioned were the practical tools for policymakers, and how the framework serves really as a practical tool, providing priorities, leverage, and a roadmap to start the conversation. And then the last point, which I think also came up a little bit in the challenges, but still it was also highlighted as a strength, is the branding around age-friendly cities and communities with one common goal and a vision across all members, which helps to leverage initiatives to policymakers and other stakeholders. And so I think we all agreed that it really has lots of strength, and I think that's why we're all here as well, because we believe in the power of the framework. And nonetheless, I think there were also very good constructive discussions around the challenges, and I'll close with that. Thank you.
I'll just move to the next question. And for this question, we have Marie Ballou and Lisa Varth, who will respond again, the culmination of all the input that you provided this morning. And question 2 is, what are the main challenges with the current framework?
Merci, Christine. Alors, je vais donc...
Thank you very much, Christine. I'm going to speak in French, and then Elisa will talk in English. So, first of all, 3 elements. The first element is as follows. One of the challenges is to actually make the decision and to come up with a program to ensure sustainability. In order to make a commitment, we need to believe in ourselves and our ability to do it. And in the group in which I participated, we said right at the very beginning that often what we lack is confidence in ourselves, self-confidence. We doubt our own capacity. And so it's very important to have the support provided by a network or by other municipalities, by people who are committed themselves, because often opportunities pass us by. And once municipalities have made that commitment, then the next challenge is actually putting it all into practice. And we're talking about implementation and putting things into practice. And of course, there's always differences between what we plan and then what we end up with at the end of the day. And we shouldn't think of that as a failure, because it's just a learning curve. We're still learning. We just have to document everything that we can do so that we can learn from any deviations, because we don't want to call them mistakes, so that we can adapt what we do have better to our needs. And then the third element would be the sustainability over time of what we do. Often people are very concerned about the sustainability, the durability of what we do, and that's a challenge as well. And then another challenge has to do with political will. We know that politicians come and go, but the people who are working in the government, public servants, whether they be working at a municipal level, regional level or national level, they tend to stay for a lot longer, public servants, which is why it's important to have those figures so that the different programs can last over time, so that they don't suffer from this electoral cycle. We need to have a certain degree of institutionalization in the positive sense of the word. We need to institutionalize our structures. The next challenge is the possibility of being able to adapt the program to different contexts. We've seen a wonderful example this morning with our Spanish colleague who was talking about his very small municipality, and we've seen how it has been adapted to that particular context. So the current framework needs to be flexible and needs to be adaptable so that it can be applied to rural areas as well as urban cities. And it needs to be able to be adapted to a wide variety of different culture contexts. So we shouldn't forget anybody's needs. Everybody's needs should be taken into account. And we need to learn to be more flexible, even more flexible. So there's a number of different solutions that have been suggested. We often say we need to listen to others and we need them to tell us what's worked and what hasn't worked, because I'm sorry, my computer is now has fallen off, or I think I've gotten lost, or it's turned off or something. There we are. Thank you very much for your help. So the last element is how we can continue to encourage participation and engagement, and how we can continue to promote inclusion. And this is all based on a deep-rooted commitment of older people. But in certain places, it's still difficult to convince people to get involved. And obviously, we need to listen to what older people say. That's our priority. But we also have to have a global approach. And we need to also work in a more intergenerational way.
So we need to guarantee inclusiveness. We need to integrate people from different backgrounds. And I go back to the rural settings in this case. We need to have the different people representative. They all should be included in this initiative.
Hearing you speak French right now just reminded me that I learned to understand Quebec French thanks to the Quebec conference that we had weekly calls for when we organized it back in 2012, 2013. And this comes to an important challenge or gap that came up in the discussion, which is about inclusion through multilingualism. As the network grows, many countries that participate, many communities that participate may not be comfortable in the main languages that are spoken in the network. So this is one of the challenges for the network maybe to address, maybe with the help of the new technologies that we have at our disposal to try and increase the facility between understanding each other. And on this one, thank you for all the interpreters to help us during this conference to overcome those barriers. I think also building on what we've heard and just really to underline again the power of the framework of the H20 city concept. I think many of the advantages, of course, when we look closely, also come with their own challenges and gaps. And one of, to add to what Marie was saying, there are capacity and resource constraints that are challenges both within each individual H20 city or community initiative, as well as, of course, in the network itself, and that limit maybe also how far we can go or how quickly we can grow as a movement when there are few human resources behind it. Another challenge that was discussed, as much as it is powerful to share the good practices and to inspire through the impressive work that we, have just witnessed over the last few days, it is equally important to learn from each other, from what doesn't work, from the failures, and to document those, because we can really go much further when we have honest conversations in a network. And so the trust that needs to be built between network members to be honest and not just, impress, but also to really share, this has been very difficult, this hasn't worked, this we had to drop, don't make the same mistakes. Maybe this is something that can become a stronger element going forward. There was also, and this is not as such necessarily linked to the framework or the model itself, but some of the difficulties with regard to a lot of competition of labels and networks, child-friendly cities, healthy cities, dementia-friendly cities, youth-friendly cities, resilient cities, environmentally friendly cities, or very well, I think, the overload that municipalities may face with many different networks and international initiatives. And one of the points that were discussed were also to say age-friendly actually caters to many, many things. It's not an isolated little pocket, but by doing age-friendly work, this also really contributes to much more. And maybe also really connecting these different dots and highlight this in the communication to the decision makers, the municipalities, if you, for example, starting such an initiative from civil society or from the research side, and you try to win political buy-in and conviction, then really having that broad framework of other initiatives, whether it's the 2030 agenda and sustainable development, or the human rights agenda, and how this contributes to others. Another point is about age-friendly initiatives often being at the local level, growing out of this model and the network, being, as we heard, inspired by others. And then there is a difficulty about the policy coherence when it comes from national policies down to the regional and local level, that sometimes they are not supported, or the work we're trying to do at the local level is not necessarily supported by national policy. And in cases where that is the case, that can really strengthen having age-friendly initiatives in a much more covering way across, addressing also the inequities that are there depending on where you live. We heard rural and urban areas, but also different parts of the countries. And then finally, another point was also about the model itself, which of course dates back in its conceptualization. And as we all know, socio-economic environmental realities have changed, and also the narrative has evolved. So we have today topics that are at the forefront of our discussions, whether it's about ageism or about digitalization, AI, about climate change, about the human rights of older persons, that were not so explicitly part of the original framework. That's not to say that the original flower doesn't cover all of those, but it's about thinking also how these important burning topics are addressed through the age-friendly cities model. Yeah, thank you. I stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marie and Lisa. Certainly in the group that I observed in this morning, there was a lot of rich discussion around the challenges around the current framework. So it's now my pleasure to introduce my next colleagues to report on the question 3, which is what do we focus on in the future in order to further develop the global network? And I'd like to introduce Nur Hassana Aham Aki and Fatima Solomoni to share the presentation report back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. We divided the thought and idea that you have given us into two kind of sectors, so it's going to be a bit conceptual and more research-oriented that I'm going to talk about, and a little bit also practical and implementation that Noor is going to talk about. So across the discussion, one message that came clear to us is that the age-friendly movement is really strong, valuable, and meaningful, but it needs more practical support, more structure, and deeper inclusion if it is to grow further and reach to more community around the world. So having said that, the priorities that I'm going to talk about, the first one is to strengthen tools, guidance, and practical support that is needed for the members. You have emphasized that cities and community do not need to start from zero, as there could be practical material that they really need as the immediate use that they can focus on then in their own context. So this includes, it could include charters, templates, talking notes, and orientation material that they could have when they start to join the age-friendly cities and community, and it helped them to take from the local government, the local setting that they are practicing in, that they are trying to support people. And then there was also a strong support for creating and strengthening a one-stop shop where specified, it could be some specified site that we have as a subsector to the WHO website, but something more specific, or a place that where it could be virtual, but it could be a lot of detailed resources, examples, and guidance in one place where people could go and find it. It would be immensely helpful for newcomers. At the same time, participants also suggested that the exciting good practice should be more focused and more detailed and published, but at the same time, we could also learn from the mistakes, not the thing that doesn't work specifically for one context, but we could learn from the challenges during the implementation that we have. Another priority was to building a stronger peer learning and mentoring and exchange. So you highlighted that you need to connect more as people, as cities, as countries, and it could be more specifically toward, not only toward the context, but also toward the practice. So people could meet and have this continuous exchange. And this could be a body system, like a regional mentor or city twinning arrangement where people could really exchange their experience. There was a call for a more peer learning visit, monitoring events where small groups could be organized and we could have more constructive discussions and webinars and practitioners in field, and new topics could be discussed and new challenges could be shared. The third priority has been discussed was creating a more structured within the global network that was described as a valuable but a clear structure that could help with national, regional, and local level. So there would be a structured knowledge, not more only more about like how they could do work, but also more about how to communicate, how to lead, how to bring opportunity, and how to create in-depth dialogue among the network. And of course, that requires more staff for WHO. Hopefully, we will get more to support, as the burden of work, I know it's immense. Applause to you, Tiago, of course, and your team and your office, of course, for continuous help for everyone. The first priority was keeping inclusion in the center of the movement. Inclusion is not additional theme to discuss, but you mentioned that it is what really age-friendly needs. We heard that the place is, if it's going to be truly age-friendly, it has to be age-friendly for everyone. And this framing, it could be a very powerful tool for every practitioner to, when they speak with policymakers, and it is because it helps them to show how a whole community could be together and benefit from the framework and benefit from the practice. And of course, it helps to attract more funding now. So it is the important point was that older people must be able to speak for themselves at international, national, and local level, such as this conference or any other level that we could think of it. However, then representation needs to be diverse. So no single older person could speak for all older person, and we need to make sure that the different voices are included and they are heard effectively. The fifth priority that was discussed is about addressing ageism, rights, and participation. You have suggested that the movement should have a more focus on strongly on the user right-based approach. This means like recognizing that local authority and institution also have obligation towards older people. And also strengthening the older people awareness of their own rights, opportunities, and the value of age-friendly initiatives, as many examples have been shared that many of them, they are really not informed. There was also a strong emphasis on combating ageism, including ageism in the workplace, and valuing the skills and knowledge and contribution of older people. And one interesting idea raised was establishing an older people council within WHO, just similar to the youth council, where it helps older people to have a stronger voice and influence. And participants also in our group also discussed that participation should be encouraged across generation, including young people, because this should not be framed, of course, as a conflict between generation, but an opportunity for distribution of resources and power between different generations to live along each other. I stop here and pass to Noor to continue with the themes.
All right, thank you very much. Please bear with us. Apparently, in our group, there's a lot of themes going on. One of the things that is interesting for us to look at is that whenever there is challenges, the participant actually gives the solution as well. So it's not just complaint, but there's a moving forward after this. So in regards to Lisa's point in expanding multilingual and especially the Global South participation. So this was across the theme where the needs to make global network more accessible to the non-English speaking countries, especially in the Global South and the French-speaking region. Participant actually suggested that the use of AI could support translation, interpretation, and also multilingual communication. Another thing that crops up is that they say while this international conference and meetup is very important, but it can also be very expensive to the lower income countries. So a lot of what we see in most of across the group, they actually requested for more support to be given to the Global South actors to attend this kind of session. Especially, this will help the network to better understand the different structural barriers to the age-friendly development. Funding is a very big issue, of course. I heard from Lisa as well. But one of the things that was interesting in my group was that they say, why don't WHO start an age-friendly city global fund so that where the lower resources country can actually, tap into that. That was one of the suggestions. But participants also noted that it's often difficult for you to attract partners, secure resources, and convince decision makers to basically support these initiatives. So suggestion was given to use a public-private partnership where they suggested as one of the way forwards, and this will also help the local and national partners to identify the funding opportunities. I think lastly for funding, a lot of them says that it should not be seen as only cost for doing AFC work, but it should be also seen, and the language that used is to be seen as an investment for the national, local, or even the state level. So that will somehow, I hope, strengthen the case for continued funding. They also look into improving monitoring and evaluation, especially evidence-based. Participants actually suggest for us to share indicators, stronger monitoring framework, and a common data platform to basically help track age-friendly work across the different contexts. There's also a need for more evaluation, more disaggregated data, and stronger links between researcher and practitioner, because we have a lot of researcher here, but not so much of implementers. So maybe the whole condition needs to be a bit more balanced in that sense. Importantly, most of them says the movement should not just only share good practices, like Lisa said, but also the need to learn from mistakes that has been done by other cities, by other practices, so that we don't keep on repeating the same mistakes. Lastly, not lastly, that's the 8th point. We have 11 more to go. Improving apart, I'm sorry, there's a lot of future things that we need to do. Embedding age-friendly work in national and local policy. So basically, participants are saying that we should be better connected to the national aging strategies, national development plans, and other major policies agenda, and does not work in silo. A national coordinator would actually help the cities to actually come together and align this effort across different levels of government. And of course, at the same time, there was a very strong emphasis on the approach that it should be more holistic and not just looking at the bottom up, but a top-down approach. And it has to be balanced. If not, it can be like one-sided in that manner. So this will actually support local action, community participation, and of course, grassroots engagement. Second last one. Building solidarity, community capacity, and long-term cultural change. Participants actually highlight the future generation may have smaller family network. These mean older people may rely more on communities, neighborhood, and local support system. So with these, work should not only focus on infrastructure and services, but the needs to build culture around where communities can actually look out for each other. And also the requires of education, motivation, civic training, meaningful participation, so that these values can basically be sustained over time. Lastly, balancing short-term action with long-term transformation. So the interventions are important, but they show immediate results. However, this action should basically look into the deeper transformation in institution, community, and policy system. I know most of us, if we work with policymakers, short-term is always a better goal rather than long-term, but aging is long-term in itself. So overall, the point from 6 to 11 shows that the global network needs to become more inclusive, better funded, more evidence-based, more connected to policy, more rooted in community and solidarity, which I think is the whole theme over these 3 days that we've been listening. In short, the future of age-friendly movement depends not only on good projects, but stronger system and shared responsibility, and of course, the long-term commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. And we always knew, I think, that that particular question was going to gather so much input and information, very rich discussions that were held. So thank you so much for an excellent rapporteur role there. Thank you. We're up to our final question, and we're going quite nicely for time. So there's always the possibility that this perhaps may finish slightly earlier than the scheduled time. But the fourth question was really, we wanted to encourage people to think in that blue sky manner with no limitations. So if resources were no issue, what would be the concrete actions you would take in order to advance the work of the age-friendly communities? And I'd now like to introduce my colleague, Elena Di Barrio, to respond to this particular question from the culmination of the groups. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Well, thank you very much indeed. We're talking about multilingualism. Well, here I am speaking Spanish. The truth is that after listening to you, I've realized that you've already mentioned everything I had to share here. So, to sum up, the idea is, what are the specific actions you would take? Well, I would say all the above. But let me highlight a few of the things that have already been said. But I'm not going to be very innovative here. Some of the key conclusions of the groups about this question include the following. For instance, starting a global project that help change our view about aging and ageism. You know, the first discussions and reflections I've been able to carry out with my colleagues here included, the fact that we need to fight ageism, avoid discrimination and stereotypes. And this is key to work in this field, in the field of aging. I think we have to have this intergenerational approach. Ageism is an element that can unite us with a common goal, where older people and younger people come together because they find themselves discriminated against. So we need to work globally to fight ageism. We've also been highlighting in my group, well, since in my group, There were people speaking Basque, the Basque language and Spanish as well. Well, it's been a very nice discussion. We've used both Spanish and Basque, and we've mentioned that we need to have different approaches, talking about fulfilling life, having purpose in your life. And I've heard, Yunji talk to us about the WHO motto, where the purpose is included. And I've been listening to you with attention, and I think that this approach has been included in everything you said. We need to have a purpose in our lives, and we need to take that into consideration. We also need to foster strategies that strengthen the a full citizenship of people with duties and rights. We need to focus on respect, diversity, peaceful coexistence, and care. I think that we need to be more fully aware of the fact that we, all citizens, have these rights. And in my group, for instance, members of the group were highlighting that maybe we should put this into the educational framework in education. As for guaranteeing participation and more inclusive participation, well, that's something that has been brought up by all of you, or most of you at least, taking into consideration the diversity of the older people that are in situation of frailty, that have dementia. And we believe that one of the challenges we're facing up to, and here I'm talking about our institute, the Mattia Institute, we want to foster a more inclusive type of participation. We need for that to work with researchers, with people that have difficulties in communication, for instance. So we need to adapt many of the tools we already have so that they can also participate. In my group, we've also talked about creating or running a public campaign about our movement, which is the great unknown. Many people don't know about us, about our movement. I'm talking about citizens in general. So we need to use all possible communications channels, get the media involved, and communicate better about ourselves and our work. We've also highlighted that we need to work hand in hand with other existing initiatives. And a colleague said that we need to be more sexy as a movement. We need to look at other movements that find funding easier. So we need to see how we can integrate ourselves in this framework, in these initiatives, in these maybe more consolidated plans. We also need to share experiences, lessons learned, mistakes, of course. I'm not going to insist on that. We need to generate evidence and knowledge. This has already been said as well. We need training at all levels, institutional. We also need to train citizens, older people as well. We believe we also need to try and have more impact in Latin America specifically, but also in other countries and regions where age friendliness is maybe less present and less well known. And then, as for the local level, we've come up with more specific topics. Well, maybe this one is more global. We need actions to ease or to support people if they want to age at home. Number of different actions around housing, transport, focusing on people who need support. Some people mentioned facilitating the purchase of electric vehicles, maybe more centers for older adults, strengthening social networks in the neighborhoods where neighbors get to know each other. Maybe for our colleagues in Singapore, for the next conference in 2028, you might want to think about getting involved other stakeholders that are not members of the network yet. We need to have more space for discussion in depth about many topics. We need to share, be able to share the outcomes of everything we have assessed. We also need funding so that colleagues from the other countries can participate. We also need to have more room to have more people participate in our conferences, because we think that there have been people who weren't able to come here today because there was no room for them. And of course, we need to share knowledge. I think that this forum is especially relevant because we can share knowledge here. And in my group, and Paul, you've mentioned this before, we've talked about how important it is to keep up the motivation and keep working with enthusiasm. We need that. We need to enjoy what we do. That is essential. Thank you very much indeed.
I'd like to really acknowledge the rapporteurs and the facilitators of those groups again. As I understand it, all of this information will be used to inform the WHO towards the next steps around how the age-friendly cities and communities approach evolves into the next period of time. It will also be used to help inform our next Congress in Singapore in 2028. So it's been very valuable, very useful and very informative to hear from so many voices in this particular way. So again, thank you. We thought to finish off with this particular segment, we wanted to give you a little exercise to do, a listening exchange exercise, for you to be able to share some of your thinking about this work. So I'll explain how this will work. So we'll ask in a moment that you can turn to the person next to you or around you, and that one person first takes a turn to respond to this question. What's one thing you are going to do in the next 90 days to move age-friendly work forward? So really to reflect over the past few days and to think, what can I do? What's been bubbling around in my mind to go away with and to take action on? We ask that in that listening exchange, one person will answer that question and the other person will simply listen. They will just listen and pay attention without interrupting, without beginning a conversation, because there's quite a lot of powerful things that happen when people are listened to well. If the person you turn to doesn't speak your language, that's no problem. All we're asking as a listener is that you pay attention, and good respectful attention. So I will time, so you're going to have just 3 minutes each to respond to this question in that listening exchange activity. So decide who you're turning to and who will be the first person to respond to that question. And then I will let you know it's time to start, which I think people have started, that's fine. And then I will let you know when to stop. Okay, that's fabulous. If you've had a turn responding to the question, can I ask that you now swap? Just swap, and if you're the person who was being listened to, now it's your turn to listen. So I'll again time 3 minutes, so it's time to swap. But it's great that people have got a lot to say. Yep.
I noticed a mistake I made. Well, no, it's not. Okay. It's time to stop. It's time to stop, everyone. Including the troublemakers in the front row here. I can see you. Colleagues from the United Nations, they're not taking notice. I can spot, yeah, Stephen White from Greater Manchester. Nicola Waterworth from Greater Manchester, you're still talking. Yeah. Okay. Wow. So I think you could have kept going for some time there. I know I could have. So I think we're just, I'm just kind of filling in time till we get the next session going, but I did want to give my heartfelt thanks to my colleague Christine again, but I should say over lunchtime me and my colleagues here, and I was the token man, by the way. I think that's probably the only reason I'm on here, but me and my colleagues were in the VIP room trying to get all this stuff written down, using this fantastic and unfamiliar technology, certainly to me. I'm still pretty 20th century when it comes to these things. And it struck me that we had, I think, the strongest concentration of age-friendly expertise and energy in a small space. And if we were, for some reason, to be hit by a drone or something like that, the whole movement would be in trouble. But we survived with goodwill, anchovies, and non-alcoholic drinks. So off we go. So although it may have seemed like a fairly straightforward exercise to get all your comments compiled, organised, themed, story told in the last few minutes, I just wanted to extend my thanks to them and to all of you for a wonderful 3 or 4 days. And I think now I'm trying to find somebody who's going to come up and say, Paul, your time is over. You're old news, and we've got some great new, fantastic people coming onto the stage. Right, okay, well, we're going to leave and see what happens. Thank you so much, and thank you to my wonderful colleagues. Bye now. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.